Welcome everybody to another time of beautiful Overwatch. I am Steidel24, and joining me for tonight's cast is Thibble. Thibble, how are you doing?
Doing all right, man. Staying busy. A bit of an early start for me. I normally run on gamer hours, so being up before 10 a.m. Pacific is an accomplishment, let's say. So we're getting out the gate early.
Well, congratulations. I'll make sure to send over your achievement pin when it gets in, of course. We are here doing the Pluto Cup, one of my favorite events that ELO Hell puts on every month. Absolute blast to cast. And we're going to be starting off with Shattering Expectations and Worn Down W. Why don't we talk a little bit about the meta, just because it's kind of switched up recently. Double Shields has been thrown a bit out the window, and a lot of heroes that we haven't seen in a while are making their way back into play.
Oh, yeah. I mean, major changes pretty much on almost every role, I would say, coming into this meta. After the what was on the experimental card was just pushed to live, because why not? Throw a little chaos into the mix, bring a little mayhem, as I always like to say. Obviously, I think the big talking point has been the tanks. Hog Zarya doing away with the old standby duo of Orisa and Sigma has been interesting, to say the least. There's been a big shift, I think, in how teams have to approach the game at a macro level because of those changes in the front line. And in the DPS line as well. I mean, there's been a lot of variants in DPS that are viable, I suppose. But I'm curious to see how teams kind of continue to iterate on what's successful to get past like a really high damaging tank line and a relatively mobile high damage support line as well. So we're in for some interesting games here, because everything is still very much in flux.
Very much in flux indeed. And here's our bracket. As you can see up there on your screen, we're going to be starting off with our match. Like I said, Shattering Expectations facing off against Worn Down W. And then in our other bracket that's going to be happening simultaneously is going to be the ELO Hell Spaceports versus Space Eggs. So looks like we have a themed match going on the other side of the field.
Yeah. I think all the teams have to wear space-themed skins for that one. That's what I heard. And Winston must be played because he's from space. In fact, a Winston Hammond, a Winston Hammond tank duo, actually very appropriate for both of those teams. So interesting games there as they try and put on their best costumes, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, both of these games look very interesting. The one we're casting especially looks very even. Their average SR for these teams, obviously there's a wide range of SRs allowed in the Pluto Cup, but the average of both of these teams is within like less than 100 SR of one another. And even between roles, these teams are very evenly matched. Neptune and Luxfry in the front line for Shattering Expectations are 3,500 and 2,150 respectively. But on the flip side, Alve, I believe, is 2,400, and their off-tank Kipzilla is about 3,140. So evenly matched, I would say, in the front line, maybe a slight edge to Shattering Expectations. But across the board here, this could be a very close match. It is a best of one, though, unless there's a draw. Obviously,
the pressure's on.
Regardless, it's still a best of one. But if there is a draw, we get a second map. So, right, exactly. These guys really need to step up right away. There's no time to like, all right, guys, let's regroup and bring it back on the next map. Because if you lose the first map, they're moving on without you. So
yeah, that's it. You're going to get left in the dust.
Yeah.
Not to mention, just a quick reminder for those of you that might be tuning in and may not know how the Pluto Cup works out. All of these people have joined as either singles or duos, and then they've been arranged onto teams. So the teams that you are going to be seeing and that you've been seeing all day are these mosh posh melting pots of different SR ranks. Anything from just at a glance, one of the lower SRs at 1829, all the way up to, we have people in here as high as 3,500, and just a little bit above that. So a nice little medley, I would say, of skills coming into these games. How does that affect play?
I mean, it definitely depends on who is the higher SR or lower SR players and how the comm structure in this meta works. I personally haven't done much research on who's doing the majority of comms in the average game lately. It could be the tank line now that it's kind of a a picked, focused, very forward-facing front line that isn't just waiting for somebody else to make a play or for a nano blade to build up. So it could be someone like a main tank, like whoever's running Roadhog, perhaps saying, "Hey, I'm going to go over here and get a pick." Or it could be perhaps like an Ana or someone in the back line saying, "Hey, I have nano. Let's go ahead and coordinate a push." If the person that is making those sorts of calls is a little higher SR and perhaps able to organize the troops a little bit better, that could be a slight strategic advantage, excuse me. But at the same time, I mean, there's definitely room in this meta for just individual carry plays. There's a lot of space for good blades, clutch nano boosts that save your front line, a good hook or a whole hog or a nice graviton surge. There's tons of space for individual plays. So if the people that are ranging towards the higher SR can really rally the troops and just make some intense plays when they need it, that could prove to be the edge.
And just looking at the teams that we are going to be having here today, I'm going to focus on the DPS roles specifically because I feel like right now, as a DPS player, you really do have a very wide range of what you can choose to play. You know, Tracer's back in the meta. Pharah can be worked in there. Of course, all of the hit scans and long-range DPS are now kind of back into the fray. So we look at Worn Down W, and both of their DPS players sit around the same rank, about 2,400 and 3,000. So they're just off on each other. And on the other side of the coin, it's pretty much the exact same numbers. So that I've noticed in my personal games and when playing on teams that I've played with, that the jump in between each rank can sometimes be a bit of a drastic change in either mechanical ability or maybe even just the ability to kind of pick out the mistakes and capitalize on those mistakes. Do you think that's going to have a huge impact, or do you think that's just, you know, that's just my solo queue games?
I mean, solo queue is a chaotic place for sure, but I think there is definitely more than a grain of truth in what you're saying there. I would definitely say that there are certain markers or certain gaps where your knowledge of the game and your game sense and understanding of the game on a more macro level is increased, or should be increased, given that you're at that level. Diamond is maybe one of those stopgaps where you start to really understand, like, okay, where do I need to position myself over the course of a fight? What do I need to be aware of in terms of cooldowns and enemy positioning and things like that? I, of course, am in Plat, the most illustrious rank, and I can tell you that a lot of people in my SR do not do that. So
it's not better in gold, I can tell you that.
Oh, yes, 100%. And most would say even in Diamond, it's not that much better. But I do think there are noticeable differences when you start climbing past 3,000 or so that could yield some interesting results. That said, as you mentioned, the DPS are extremely evenly matched here. 2,400 and 2,900, and then 2,400 and 3,000. I mean, it's literally a net difference of maybe 75 SR. So that will actually be a very interesting matchup, because I think both of those DPS lineups will be trying to do very similar things and trying to perhaps understand that they aren't so different. Not in the sense that they want to like be pacifists, but in the sense that they want to exploit those similarities for gain, because Overwatch is not a pacifist game.
Well, it does look like we just got our final player into the lobby, so we're going to be hopping into our map in just a moment, folks. But before I do want to talk very briefly on format, because there's not a lot to talk about. This is a one and done kind of situation. We kind of mentioned it earlier, but the pressure's on, the stakes are high. You lose the first map, you're out. That's all there is to it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts, no bells and whistles. That's all you've got. And I'm really excited to see, Thibble, is the coordination between the main tanks and the supports of these two teams, because both Shattering Expectations and Worn Down W have their highest SR players on those roles, whether it's the main tank or the support, and often a duo, a main tank and a support duo that work well together. The support keeps the main tank alive, can completely change a game. It can it's a carry combination, if you will.
Yeah, there's something to be said for a pocketed Roadhog with damage boost and nano boost and all the heals in the world, and how they can just kind of walk forward and do whatever they want. Especially in this meta, I think there's a lot of room for players like that and duos like that to really enable one another and drastically increase the capabilities of the team as a whole. Because when you have that focus player, it's like, okay, do we try and focus down the carry? Do we try and focus down the people that are enabling the carry, like the supports? But then what do you do about the damage dealers? And it creates this sort of rock, paper, scissors situation where no matter what you're going to do, you might be in some trouble. So whichever team can make the most advantage of enabling whoever they've determined to be their carry player, like you said, the higher SR players most likely in those sort of main tank and main support roles, if they can really get the most out of those carry players, that could be the edge that kind of tips them over. Or we could take these singles and duos that have formed together into these teams, and perhaps they've spent some time together and really tried to synergize and understand the game a little bit more. If the higher SR players are doing what they can to explain these concepts to the lower SR players and say, hey, over the course of the fight, I'm going to do this. I need you to stand here. Most importantly, so you don't die, but also so you enable me to do all the things I want to do. If they can have that communication in place, that sort of structure could help overcome the chaos of a carry player being enabled and just wreaking havoc on your team. So I'm very curious to see if they've if these teams have put in that sort of work to really be able to not only just be carried and do some carrying, but also to enable one another to carry each other. Because at the end of the day, Overwatch is a team game. You can only get so far by pocketing a Roadhog. In this meta, it's quite far, frankly. But, we'll see.
Yeah, it doesn't matter how many YouTube videos you watch on how to carry out of your placement. You need the team to be there for you. It has to happen. It's if you haven't learned this by now, it's been 3 years. You've had enough time. We get to be abrasive about it.
Yeah, Overwatch is a team game. Please do not forget. I'm looking at you people in all of my ranked games.
Right. But we're going to be kicking it off at a tried and true fan favorite of a map. We are going to be going over to Kings Row, as you just saw. And as we get our first glimpse at our team compositions, you are going to have Worn Down W in the blue, and you're going to have Shattering Expectations in the red on the attack first. So they're going to get to set the pace. But let's take a look at this defensive composition.
Yeah, so we're seeing coming out from Worn Down W actually a Rein Zarya, definitely throwing my hog predictions out of the window. But the Widow here could actually prove to be pretty impactful. We're looking at a duel, so we'll have to see which one of the two can hit their shots a little more effectively, because that could really open things up.
Well, and it looks like my bad guys, Worn Out W is going to be in the red, and they are going to be on the attack, Shattering Expectations on the defense in the blue.
Good to know. Good to know. So, Sybil already going down.
Yeah, very early pick there from Minox. That's going to open it up into a 6v5 on the point. Big anti-nade onto Neptune from Pykel. And that's going to open the door wide open. Look at the kills just come flooding through. The importance of a pick.
Right, Minox and Pykel there taking the off angle allows Pykel to get the anti-nade behind the Reinhardt shield, which really just signals to the team like, hey guys, go. This guy is not getting heals. He was already like a third HP. It was super simple for them to just take him out. And once the Reinhardt falls in a Rein Zarya sort of composition like this, there's really not much more to be done. And with no shield, Minox could just step up into whatever angle he wanted and pretty much have free reign. So a great, very clean first fight coming out here. And now we've got 5 minutes and change to start pushing through streets.
Very substantial time bank to boot, but Shattering Expectations has been able to take possession of this corner. You see Neptune going in, getting aggressive on this Winston. Went ahead and put that Reinhardt back into the spawn room, bullying the Zarya in the process. And thankfully, he does have the healers to keep himself alive and well, but the kills are still coming through for Worn Down W. They've been able to keep their momentum, take the corner, and take the fight.
And at the very least, they managed to pull out Primal here from Kipzilla. But at the end of the day, I don't know if the committal was really necessary. I mean, these fights are going very well. Minox obviously starting off well. Pycall getting just stagger kills here in between fights. I don't know if the Winston coming out from Shattered Expectations is really getting as much work as they want done. Obviously, they're just going to try and build a primal and come in for this contest. But it really leaves a lot of angles open for Minox to just run wild.
Oh, man, the beautiful anti-nade coming in from Pycall there at the very, very end. Right as Neptune landed on the payload, the anti-nade landed, so he couldn't do anything.
Right, and I mean, I think the plan, obviously, there for Shattered Expectations was we can run in and give Neptune just enough time to build up Primal, stall that out, and maybe hope for a pick. Ooh, Minox getting some nasty shots here all the way through. But ultimately, Pycall, I think just the anti-nades have been so impactful. Neptune literally didn't live long enough to get an ultimate off, and he was already 90% walking into the fight. That's very fast.
Yeah, the pounce alone gave him about 8% of that ultimate, so he was barely not able to secure it. He did end up using that Primal Rage just now in this team fight to get up onto the high ground and survive that engagement. It looks like Furious Demo with this Pulse Bomb looking for the perfect situation. Graviton does get thrown out there at the end by Alv. Sybil going to be going to go ahead and take care of that threat as the kills continue to come in for Worn Out W. They've been able to push this payload quite reliably. It looks like quiet understanding with Neptune in the back. Neptune just kind of saying hello to the support line.
Yeah, and I mean, these fights are, like, at the very least, I'll give Shattered Expectations credit here because they did manage to briefly stabilize on this fight. But I think the disengage and the commit of ultimates coming out from Worn Down W was exactly what they needed. I mean, throwing out a quick nano boost from Pycall just to make sure that your Winston could deal a good amount of damage. Hitting the sleep dart onto Neptune as well on the backline, who's now swapped to Wrecking Ball. Overall, they're looking pretty clean as they push through here. Sybil, though, getting some work done.
Yeah. Neptune able to spin to win, keep things alive, even gets himself a kill while he goes on that merry-go-round. That's going to allow them to stabilize for a little bit as the respawns come back in, but Kipzilla still doing his job, taking the DPS out of the action. Calyx finding a kill as well as the Winston for Worn Down W continues to find picks onto the support line. Neptune, however, does not need to stop. He can just keep on spinning around and almost a very deadly jump by the Winston. But it looks like Kipzilla is going to try and use that Primal Rage to stall Meebot out for just a little bit longer while Sybil builds up this Deadeye off to the side.
Sybil has quietly, or perhaps not so quietly, been putting in a lot of work here, getting tons of damage, getting the right stuns on the right people, and just in general hitting his shots. He used his Deadeye at the start of that fight, which has admittedly been a little extended as it looks like we're heading towards the end of the round, but was still able to build up another 80% before he died. Neptune, I have to shout out because the spin to win was inspirational. And frankly, quite effective. Now he's actually able to recontest and come back with the mines. It's not going to be enough to really finish off the round, unfortunately. But the fact that they were able to hold for an additional 45 seconds or so off of that was
at least, yeah,
something. Right? Yeah, at the very least. So a good attempt at a stabilization there towards the end, even if it was just a little chaotic. But sometimes, really, that's what you need. A couple boop kills here and there coming out from the Brigida and the Wrecking Ball. It just wasn't, I think, obviously decisive enough, not enough picks coming through to really dissuade Worn Down W from just continuing to push. Minox coming back. Obviously, a Wrecking Ball and a Zarya don't really do much to protect against a Widow, so he started getting his shots in. Furious Demo on the Tracer was just kind of bouncing around, doing whatever he liked. I feel like Shattered Expectations need to put maybe a little more pressure on the DPS line, but they'll have to be careful of Pycall as well. Because he has been lights out this round so far.
A stunning display of support skill from Pycall so far. Those anti-nades have been not only just beautiful to watch, but crucial for the team fights that these guys are winning. I mean, the duo of those nades plus Kipzilla's Winston is that support main tank carry combination that I was talking about. Being able to run the Ana so well that you can enable your whole team with a single cooldown, and then having someone like Kipzilla there to capitalize on it.
Oh yeah, and it's definitely just Pycall saying, hey, I got the nade, we got to go. Now, though, I'm very curious to see.
Yes.
This is the Leah. This is the teleport bastion
strat.
strat.
Caesar messed it up a little bit, but it's okay. He's there. It's unfair. He's happy. I'm happy. I hope you're happy at home. It's not going to get too much work done, but the meme has been completed. He gets Minix out of the fight and allows for Sybil to get Furious in the back line as well. This is going to open the door for shattering expectations as they continue to flood onto this point, trying to prove to Worn Down W that they're not the only team here that it wants to win. They're not the only team that can take the point on the first take, and they're not the only team that can set an impressive time bank.
Right. I mean, I definitely think a niche strat like that is really going to throw people off, especially at this average SR range, which is about 2,700, I believe. I mean, that is textbook. I mean, it's a weird textbook, but it's textbook because good old Liam OW of the Irish World Cup team formulated that strat with a couple of his friends. I am very pleased to have been not quite in the room for its creation, but definitely in the discussion as it was being formulated. To see it in a game is heartwarming, to say the least. And in general, it's just insane. It's just one of those crazy strats that you could only ever do in a game like Overwatch. Now, though, this push through streets might not be quite as effective. You can't teleport a Bastion on the high ground up here, but a Shatter, though.
I was gonna say, you may not be able to teleport a Bastion to the high ground, but you can put the entire team on the ground, and that's just an easy way to walk forward. Meebot gonna use that Coalescence to find himself a couple of kills as well, and now shattering expectations with 4 minutes and 45 seconds left is cruising through Streets phase.
Nice stagger kill there onto Minox as well. Furious Demo and Pycall swapping. Pycall only briefly. He swaps back to the Baptiste, but Furious Demo now on the Tracer. Probably trying to put a little extra pressure on the back line because that's what's been enabling this double barrier composition to work. It doesn't quite give as much space to the Ana as the Winston Zarya combination, and now with this wall coming out on point, they're in for a tough fight.
Good wall there, just in front of the corner to make sure that anybody using that wall for protection can no longer dish out damage. Neptune finding the kill with the Fire Strike. Pharah now in play. Furious Demo. Seeing if they can find anything special. And once again, we're looking back onto the Ana play. And Calyx as well, doing a superb job on the Elder Amari.
It looks like Shattered Expectations have been doing a lot better job of putting pressure onto the DPS line here. Minox has not been getting nearly as much space as before. That said, the Pharah is actually a pretty effective counter. I say that as he goes down, strictly because there was no long-range hit scan. That said, if you're going to end up on the ground, a Reinhardt's going to get you.
That indeed. No, man, a beautiful sleep dart comes out. Kipzilla had the whole hog, tried to commit it to the fight, but got slept in the process. Ate a little bit too much, fell into a food coma there at the very end. Calyx and Scylla both finding themselves a couple of kills. Spin to win. Now it's Worn Down W's turn to spin to win once again. But Alv not able to do it as Caesar lands that pulse bomb. And with 3 minutes, 51 seconds left in the time bank, 2 minutes for Worn Down W. Both teams have the time they need to take this first point again.
I mean, this has certainly been a brawl of a map. You know, they both these teams know it's a best of one, and they're leaving everything out on the field. Worn Down W had, frankly, what I consider to be a very good attack overall, but Shattered Expectations really shattering expectations. They adapted very well, I think, pulling out some niche prepared strats. And that goes back to the point I made about if these teams could take the time to coordinate and put together some set plays and things like that, it's a pretty advanced expectation. But if it's a thing that you can do as a team, you're going to go far in a tournament like this. So I think the continued adaptation, the flexibility in hero pools, the understanding of who you need to focus, who you need to counter, and how, those are the sorts of moves these teams need to be making here on the fly in these best of ones to secure the W. Because you only get the one chance unless they draw, of course, which is still very possible. This is drawable for either team. That said, the time bank difference is pretty substantial. It's almost double here for Shattered Expectations. So we'll have to see if this composition coming out from Worn Down W, if this is their composition, gets any work done.
Good deflect out the gate from Minox to deny that Fire Strike from Neptune. And Worn Out W really cannot waste any time here, but they also need to be careful in what engagement they decide to go in for. Minox getting very deep into the fray. Has to back himself out. 4 health by the time that fight was done, but it does allow Furious Demo to get behind Neptune and find themselves a kill. With no mercy in the support line, there's no way for that Neptune to come back except for the long walk back from spawn. And in the meantime, Minix and Alv are just going to go absolutely nasty on your team here. Worn out W once again with a quick take.
A bit of a mirror of their first attack as well. Another great anti-nade from Pycall opening the door on Neptune, who's now swapped to the Roadhog. Has decided to be a slave of the meta, as it were, which, you know, will allow. Kibzilla just trying to take some space here in streets, but he is getting caught out just a little bit. He's going to have to get out of there. 16 health. But Calyx is not going to let that happen, yeah.
Not at all. I mean, what kind of Lucio would you be if you didn't speed boost after the monkey when he ran away, right?
16 health, no less? What else are you going to do? Nanoblade.
Yeah, Minix trying to get a lot out of this Nanoblade. Will find Luxray looking for the next kill onto the Ashe, but the Coach Gun going to make that difficult. Finally, the Shurikens will be the end of Sybil there, but a very, very low health Minix in a very tricky situation is going to have to face off against Meebot and Calyx on that Lucio and Moira duo.
Somewhere out there, Samito slammed his desk. Moira is so broken, he screams. But ultimately, the Genji had 16 health. He wasn't making it out of there alive. Good effort from Minox, and he does get resurrected by Furry Tail Uwu, which is a name I have not said yet, but definitely should be saying more, just because it's fun. And now Worn Down W are looking, they're about to enter overtime, but they could be looking down the barrel of at least 5 points if they land this Graviton properly to prevent the re-engagement.
Oof! No re-engagement at all, actually.
Oh,
they're
wow.
going to go ahead and just give them that point and then fight them here. And now Kip trying to get some cheeky environmental kills, but not able to land those final hits. Is going to have to back out of the fight pretty much completely. Does receive a bubble from Alv there at the very end. Getting hooked in by Neptune. However, Alv at 94 health has the Graviton, throws it out, but a big Riptire and Bob make him waste the ultimate to boot. But a lot of ultimates were used, and it doesn't really matter because the round is over.
Right. I was almost going to criticize Alv for that Graviton. It looked a bit of a panic cue, as it were, but then I kind of realized it's the end of the round. You got to kind of smoke him if you got him. So at the very least,
it was too intense. We were too focused on the action, not the clock.
Yeah, I mean, a great last fight. I was worried for a bit that, you know, that Shattered Expectations perhaps didn't commit enough on that second point defense to try and prevent that fifth point from ticking over. Perhaps they could have pulled out the Grav a little bit earlier, but ultimately I think their disengage was actually pretty smart. They played it very patiently and were able to stop the cart before even getting around that first corner on streets. That said, 5 points and almost 21 meters is no joke, and even with 351 in the bank, they're going to have to be pretty smart about how they do this. I'm looking for, I don't think they'll go for the teleport Bastion strat again, as much as I would love to see it, trust me. But I am curious to see how their adaptations come through to let them kind of blow through streets again, perhaps, or at the very least build up enough ultimates to break through that barrier. They have a lot of time. They can lose a couple fights and come back, no problem, stack ultimates as much as they want, but they have to be able to communicate that. If they get a little too flustered, a little too rushed, this 351 could burn down very, very quickly.
Yeah, and Thibault, not to mention, they are still running the Symmetra. They aren't currently showing any sort of play or plans for a Bastion, but they are definitely trying to be cheeky with it. They're still looking to go to the top of the statue. Oh, no! It's a complete debate. They're going to go ahead and throw the teleporter up on top, allow Worn Down W to think that they're going up there, and then speed boost themselves through the hotel with the Reaper to boot. However, Minix, not fooled and not phased, not at all. He's going to go ahead and just completely destroy there from the sidelines with the help of Furious Demo. The double hit scan, the Ashe McCree, the deadlock double date, a very beautiful and tried and true combination for this hold.
I mean, I think Worn Down W were really just able to adapt right away. They definitely spotted the fake out as soon as it happened and said, okay, we know exactly where they're going. We're just going to rotate over there and just put a bunch of front-loaded damage in. Kibzilla walking forward immediately and cutting off the rotation. Caesar was a little bit behind and didn't end up being much of a factor in that fight.
But now that they've engaged once more, you see the hack go on to Furious Demo. However, Kibzilla and Minix are the ones to grab the first two kills. The tank line for Shattering Expectations no longer there. Kipzilla going to get very aggressive on this. Winston wants to find out the support line before they can get back to the spawn room. Isn't able to secure the kills, but gets a couple more ticks to his ult percentage.
Right, and I think in general, Minox is just getting tons of value because the composition that Shattered Expectations are running focuses so heavily on these like grouped up rotations. So obviously you can catch someone out just like that as Calyx goes down, but also get huge amounts of value from a Dynamite perhaps, and then come into the fight with a massive damage advantage.
Speaking of advantage, putting a full team into a Graviton and hitting them with an anti-nade gives your team a slight advantage in the fight. We're now W going to be taking advantage of that. And then on top of that, they're going to be taking the point as well.
So the swap onto the Sombra, I think, is pretty interesting. I must not have seen it because Sybil's already on the way 80% to an EMP. In general, Shattered Expectations are looking very good from the ultimate front. They have both support ults coming online, the Death Blossom and potentially the EMP if they can build it up fast enough. That said, Worn Down W have 5 of their own, so it's going to be a matter of how well they can counter and how well Peacock can get shots like that. His nades have been lights out.
And look at that, another one right there. Sybil able to find one. The hack goes out on the Furry Tail Uwu, but it's not going to be the hack of your dreams. Kills still coming through for Worn Out W. They have 3 ultimates on board. They were hacked, but that's not going to be too much of an issue. It's just a forced hold, a forced save, if you will.
I definitely would have forced saved that EMP. It got 4 people, but the rest of Sybil's team was dead. He was definitely not going to get much value out of that. No one was low enough to really try and clean up on his own. Sombra, obviously not the greatest damaging character. Her hack utility is really what you bring her for. Now he's going to have to try and rebuild that and hope that the tank ultimates, the Death Blossom, and the Sound Barrier can hold, get them through enough to at least get the cart rolling, because there's 30 seconds left. This is their last chance. I definitely would have saved that if I could. The beat comes out.
Last chance indeed. Minix in a very good position there on the high ground. Has the Bob. The Deadeye going to be used by Furious Demo there at the very end. And now only a couple members of Shattering Expectations remain near the point. They're going to be sent back to spawn with 15 seconds left, meaning they're only going to have 7 seconds once they get to the point. They're trying to get their Hammond on point to get there for the overtime contest, but you got slept, you got booped. It's just not going to happen. And now Bob standing at choke in between you and the point is a done deal.
Yeah, I mean, the grab coming out from Alv, I respected it, though it didn't actually get that much done. That said, the sleep onto Neptune trying to recontest before overtime, rather, was so clutch. And he hit a nade on his way out, so he couldn't run for a health pack or anything like that. He managed to touch the point, but not close enough to the start of overtime to maintain it. So, of course, as he touched it and was then forced away and eliminated, no overtime coming out for Shattered Expectations. They had the time bank for sure, but ultimately they weren't able to get the right amount of value out of their ultimates. The EMP coming out when they were pretty much already out of that fight, the Death Blossom being held for 3 or 4 fights, Caesar just couldn't find an opening. But obviously props to Worn Down W there. They never gave them an opening. There was never a moment where Pikal or anyone else on the team really were giving them any room to breathe or make the rotations they wanted to make, and their adaptations just fell a little bit short.
I did want to ask a little bit about the Shatter Expectations. Worn Out W had a pretty good handle on that communication aspect that you were talking about earlier, about having a shot caller, about having somebody who consistently was going to be kind of organizing the team. It really did seem like that was the aspect that Worn Out had that Shatter didn't really have.
Right. I think Shatter Expectations definitely had the idea of, hey guys, we're going to try and throw them off with some set plays and some set rotations. And, maybe even practice a few of those rollouts in some scrims or games or whatever practice they've been doing. That said, I think Worn Out W were just able to say, okay, we see what they're trying to do here. This is how we counter it in the moment. And someone making that call was able to coordinate everybody such that they knew where to be. They knew when to use their ultimates, or at the very least got pretty lucky with a couple of them. And we're just generally able to get a read on Shatter Expectations' efforts to kind of surprise them. The fake out rotation, in a standard rank game, perhaps that would be ridiculously effective. I wish people would try that in my rank games. But if the team is prepared for a move like that and they know that you're coming in that direction, or that you're going to try and fake it out and then rotate through that first small room in front of the point, simple enough to counter. All you have to do is walk over to where they want to be, separate the back line from the front line or anything else like that you might want to do, and just pick them apart. And that's exactly what Worn Out W were able to do for 4 minutes. Like that is an accomplishment, because there's enough space in there to really build up a massive ult advantage at least twice. So the fact that Worn Out W were really able to maintain their composure, always have a couple ults available if they needed them, but also just get the picks and be in the right spots for most of those fights was pretty massive. So tip of the hat, I suppose, to whoever's making the calls over there. Tip of the hat to Pakal, who is definitely my player of the game. Just total slobber knocker of an Ana player, getting huge.
I agree. I 100% agree with your choice for the MVP of this match.
Oh yeah, great game. I mean, close all
great
the way
game,
through.
and hopefully, if this is any sort of precedent, hopefully it's just gonna get better from here. Worn Down W is going to be moving on to our semifinals, where they are going to be facing off against Rapid Unscheduled Disassembly. And it looks like in our other bracketed game, we had ELO Hell Spaceports face off against Space Eggs. And Space Eggs was able to come out on top. So they will be advancing to play against CUBE, Cube. But don't go anywhere, folks. We're going to be right back with some more Overwatch action with the ELO Hell Esports Pluto Cup. And we're back, ladies and gentlemen. It's myself, Staddle24, joined by the wonderful Thibble, and we are bringing you our second match, which is going to be one of our semifinal matches. We're going to be joining two teams that we have not seen yet, Space Eggs and Cube, as they take on what I believe is going to be Volskaya Industries at the moment. Yep, Volskaya is going to be the map. Thibble, any predictions for this? It's a one-off, so they can't make mistakes.
Well, they could draw, though I don't know if that counts as a mistake. Anyway, Volskaya is a really fun map, especially right now. I feel like it's always been like, not that we really hype up 2CP that much, but if I had to hype up a 2CP, it would definitely be Volskaya. I think the first point is very strategically complex. You have a lot of options. You can play Junkrat. You could play a double hit scan sort of setup. You could play for a Mercy, perhaps, or maybe try and run a Sombra. The tank lines can also be very versatile. You could go for a double barrier or a Rein Zarya or a dive of some sort, because we have like 18 different variations of dive, of course. So I'm curious to see what these teams kind of pull out, what they're more comfortable with, and how effectively they can use those picks on a map as varied as Volskaya.
Well, let's take a look at our rosters real quick. Like we've said before, these are hosh-posh teams. They're just kind of muddled together. They are, of course, balanced as best as the ELO Hell staff can muster. We've got a couple of familiar names coming into play. Aimbot, Parasite, Hiccup, a couple of names that I've seen around the ELO Hell community before. It's always nice to see familiar faces.
Definitely, yeah. And I mean, I think the fact that these guys have been around a little bit in some of these events might give them not necessarily an edge, but perhaps a little more comfort and familiarity. And obviously, the more comfortable you can be, the more you can just kind of focus on the game, the better off you are. I mean, that's a bit of a John Madden analysis here, but like that could be a very small edge coming into a game like this, where you really only have one chance, again, unless you draw, which is also super possible because it's 2CP and you just never know. Getting on to Volskaya now. Some interesting stuff coming out here from SpaceX on defense.
We're currently seeing the double shields with Sigma Reinhardt, and I've seen very little double shield recently. Teams have been very reluctant to run it. It's very much leaned into the favor of this Zarya Roadhog composition that we're seeing on the attacking team.
Right. I mean, I think that's what we all think of when we think of what's the meta right now. But I think the Sigma Rhine is a reasonable option. It gives you a lot of space and also counters a lot of the more popular DPS and support picks like an Ana or an Ashe or a Widow. So this could end up being reasonably effective, but they're going to have to get some work done, especially this Mercy Echo duo, excuse me, because they've got their work cut out for him with some hit scans on the field.
And Lesra has done a pretty good job of keeping themselves out of damage while Jazz opens things up with the initial pick. Make that 2 picks. Clock McCurran also going to be taken out very early on there. And with that, we are going to have to see Cube go back to spawn. Space Eggs will be able to hold this defense strong as they pass that first minute mark.
Right. And some swaps already coming out here from Cube. Looking at the McCree here to maybe try and put a little extra pressure onto Lesra, who is already doing extremely well for themselves. 71% on an Echo ultimate is no joke. That said, the tank ultimates also got a lot of build up here in this first fight. That tells me that SpaceX here are not afraid to really step up and pump the aggression. With the McCree, though, that might be a little metered.
Talking about stepping up and taking the aggression, the Gravitic Flux comes out very early on, but it does get slept out. In the meantime, Castleton able to find 2 kills from off on this high ground, spotting that little red Riding Hood Ashe skin. Having that battle with the McCree on the high ground, not able to land that TNT, a bit of a preemptive shot, but a big anti-nade from Hiccup into a sleep dart is going to put Brig One Trick into a very tricky situation. The supports, however, are still there to keep him alive as Cube tries to get this initiation onto the point. They have been able to zone out the majority of Space Eggs off of the point and are now basically playing defense, just trying to keep them from reinitiating.
I'm actually really glad we got Hiccup's POV there because he really was putting in the work. The Nano Boost came in clutch to protect against the charge, and he was able to top off his DPS as he made his way through that high ground hallway. Now, though, the re-engage and the huge shatter.
Yeah, Brig One Trick really laying it down right there. Jazz, the one who opens it up with the kill, but a big charge comes in onto aimbot from Brig One Trick as Castleton gets himself a kill as well, and Space Eggs is able to balance things out, tip the scales back in their favor, and push back to the initial choke.
I mean, just a great re-engage there. I think they understood that they weren't going to be able to push through that narrow choke, especially with the Bob already placed there to try and zone them out. And to be fair, it was quite effective. 90.2% is no slouch. But the huge shatter, I just don't think they were prepared for it. Ultimately, the shields... sorry, there were no shields, actually. That makes a lot of sense now that I think about it. Of course, the shatter's going to get huge value. There's no barriers to stop it. Now, though, he's got to build that back up again, and Lesra's on the sim.
It looks like they're going to go ahead and use the Graviton and the Whole Hog. In the meantime, off to the side, Taz is going to find 2, but Jazz is going to find 2 as well. And that's going to even things up. 2 members now left for Space Eggs on the point as they try and mitigate this capture as best they can. Jazz able to find a kill onto 2 rounds, keeping himself alive, trying to make time for his respawns to get back. But it looks like point 1 is going to go ahead and go on over to Cube as Space Eggs repostures.
I mean, Jazz getting 4 with some help from that anti-nade from Egg. You can't really do much more than that as a Sigma. Hats off there. Ultimately, at some point, you have to realize, okay, this fight is lost. I'm just going to die on the point, which is exactly what he did. And I mean, there were 30 seconds left at that point, so they had done their job on first. Now there's only 3 minutes left to try and take second, which is a notoriously tricky point. They're really just fishing for a hook at this point and trying to zone out and just kind of capture the high ground and look for an early pick to open things up. Because on Volskaya second, you need a decisive engage and a clean fight win, or you're never going to cap.
An interesting choice from the Reinhardt on the side of Space Eggs, using that teleporter to go up onto the high ground to challenge the attacking team. And it is going to work out. They went after the Reinhardt. He was able to teleport back and allow for Castleton to get a big play.
Right, and SpaceX so far have definitely shown us that they're not afraid to step up and initiate a fight when you're not expecting it. The teleport onto the high ground, exactly as you says, completely nullifies Cube's efforts to try and take that space and just wait for a pick to come through to start off the fight. SpaceX said, no, we're going to come to you, we're going to get the pick, and we're going to end the fight on our own terms. So really smart move from them. I don't know if that'll work again. That said, they could totally always try it so long as teleporter's up. Now, though, the ultimates are definitely in their favor as well. In addition to taking that fight and stopping any potential snowball of sorts, they've also maintained their ult economy really well. If they can play this smart, they could keep going for quite a while.
What a Symmetra wall right there to completely negate that Bob. Lesra now putting Hanzo into a smaller room with a man with a big hammer, and that's never going to end well. Looking for the kills there at the very end. Not able to find any exit frags, but not really too worried about that. They have the ult economy. They have the time bank in their favor. And at this point, if you're on the side of Cube, you're starting to get a little bit sweaty in the hands. You only got a minute left to get some sort of progress on the point.
Right, and they have 3 ultimates coming online, so they can either try and choose to commit with those 3 or try and pull out more from SpaceX, who did not use much in that last fight, and then come back with maybe a couple more, maybe the DPS ultimates online as well. They need to move quickly, though. The way they're moving at this pace, they pretty much only have 1 shot.
Oh, but they've already lost 1 member. There's 2. Hiccup and Aimbot both finding opening kills as the Nano Boost goes on to Brig 1 trick. He's going to have to deal with a Nano Boosted Reinhardt in 2 rounds, but the charge is just long enough. He's able to find the kill. Now holding that shield and holding steady on the point. Parasite trying to keep Space Eggs alive throughout the rest of this engagement as Taz finds 1 and Egg responds in kind. Parasite trying to get that res, but gets hit in the face by a storm arrow from Taz, and that's going to be just about it. Space Eggs will be able to stabilize once again. Lesra going from the Symmetra to the Bastion.
I love this from Lesra.
Oh, no.
I've loved this whole round. Oh, this stagger is going to be nasty, though. Dude, just die.
Oh.
Just die, man. That's rough, because now you've got 10 seconds. Who's even going to touch at this point? He was hoping he could be sneaky and hide behind that wall, but he is probably like a 1,400-pound German man in a suit. So, like, that doesn't
Not
really
very
work.
sneaky.
No, and the round is already over. Yeah, that was a rough stagger. You needed to definitely get out of there. I don't know if Charge was on cooldown or he wasn't confident that he could escape, but that cost them their last attempt at second pretty much. Not that it would have been the best. There were less than 20 seconds left when they finally found him, but you really needed to be not where he was. I mean, some great aggression and adaptability coming out from SpaceX, though. It was more than just one mistake from a Reinhardt player. It was, frankly, SpaceX playing very well and understanding the win conditions of their fights and of their holds in general. Great ult economy coming out on second. Some great time bank training on first, just to make sure that there wasn't too much time for Cube to build up any sort of ult advantage. And now the shoe's on the other foot. They have the opportunity to attack and really not only just take the first point quickly, but then maybe have a lot of extra time to try and take second. And no matter what, they only need that first tick onto second point to win. So this is still drawable. This could definitely get interesting if Cube really step up on the defense here. But I would say that SpaceX are probably feeling very confident coming into their attack. And Lesra, I don't think he's going to roll out with the Bastion, but I have been loving the flexibility from him. He has really done whatever his team has needed him to do. And who knows, Castleton on the Sim, maybe they do go with the Bastion, just sheer chaos. But they'll be up against a Junkrat, 2 barriers, and Ashe, who's been doing very well, and an Ana, who's been doing very well. So this might be a fairly even defense, or it could go very quickly and very chaotically.
Oh, speaking of quickly and chaotic, they're going to go ahead and do the Symmetra teleporter onto the top of the tractor. They meant to jump onto the sky bridge, but they didn't make the jump, but it doesn't matter. Lesra in that Bastion got lost in all of that commotion, so nobody was paying attention to the Omnic, who was just demolishing their team. Aimbot now on the high ground is going to get taken out, and a very, very tricky Guardian Angel there from Clock is going to put her into trouble as they stall out the Mercy and take the first point. And with 6 minutes and 17 seconds left, that's an insane amount of time.
I don't want to call GG's ever, because the caster curse is real and also it's just mean. But wow, 6 minutes to cap 1 tick of second is definitely doable, I would say. That said, I've seen crazy defenses before, and we could always see them again. Of course, I've totally cursed it. Brig 1 trick gets the pick on the Hiccup.
You have Brig 1 trick is going to get the first pick, but Cube still very much in control of this fight. Taz now getting taken down by Lesra. They weren't expecting this Bastion to be so far off point. Does look like with Lesra on the Bastion, they will be able to stabilize and push things back into their favor. Oh, they're trying to get to the Bastion as quickly as possible, but now in a tank form, it's all but over. Space Eggs will be able to take that win.
Clean as you like, for sure. I think that they definitely realized, okay, we really got to get to the Bastion. This guy has been a little problematic. But by then, 25% of the 33 that you needed was already gone. So ultimately, I think that first pick really started snowballing things, giving the Bastion the space to really just set up and melt through your Reinhardt shield and get through your backline and everything was definitely all they needed. So, excuse me, good on SpaceX there, I would say, for really just throwing caution to the wind and saying, hey, man, Bastion good. Bastion do real good. Why don't we just play Bastion? And they're not really being an answer to that in games like this where chaos is a little more of a constant, where we can more consistently expect teams to be a little unprepared, perhaps, for adaptations like that. It's the type of format where the rock, paper, scissors of Overwatch really comes into play. And you start to say, okay, if we play this, or rather, if they play this sort of composition, we have to be ready to counter it because they're going to take advantage of these short-term imbalances, either in damage or in frontline durability or in support play. And we really don't have the time to let them do their thing and then we adapt later. Because like we've been saying, this is a one and done situation. This is best of one. So you must be quick on the adaptations here. And Cube just weren't able to turn it around quick enough.
They did do they had a formidable effort. They were not able to secure it, of course. I mean, I do agree with you with that. I also think that Space Eggs did a little bit better with their coordination. And like you said, with these teams just kind of being cobbled together, that factor, I feel, becomes tenfold. It's so much more important just because if you can bring a fun strat or an interesting strat like we saw with that teleport from Space Eggs on that first point, that's not something that I've ever seen before. I would have liked to have seen it work out and then make it into that sky bridge from there. But even though they didn't make it through the sky bridge, the sticker shock of it was enough to create an opening. And because it is that one map format, you don't have the chance to learn about your opponents. Communication and sticker shock, I think, are going to be the big factors coming into our next match.
Oh, yeah. I mean, throughout. And frankly, the composition doesn't even necessarily have to work. It really just has to surprise them long enough. And you have to live long enough to take advantage of that surprise. So, yes, the teleport didn't get them to where perhaps they wanted to go, but it still got them somewhere unexpected. And if the other team can capitalize on you making that mistake in this set play that you're trying to pull off, obviously it doesn't work. But if they're so gobsmacked by you attempting to teleport into the team that they can't adapt quickly enough over the course of the fight to stop you, then technically it totally worked, even if it didn't quite go the way you wanted it to. It's definitely the two cakes philosophy. You shouldn't compare your cake to somebody else's. You just have to know that people will be happy that there are two cakes.
I haven't heard that, but I'm going to use that.
It's very useful.
In my little box of anecdotes.
Yeah, for sure.
It does look. Let me take a quick check on our bracket right now. It does not look like we have confirmation on who won the rapid unscheduled disassembly versus worn down W matchup just yet. But the winner of that match will be going on to face Space Eggs in the final here in just a moment. There you go. There's that bracket for you right on your screen. And, barring a upset by rapid unscheduled disassembly, and I say upset, but really just we haven't seen them play yet. But if Worn Down were to face off, if they were to continue on against Space Eggs, and you had to, at face value, pick one of those two teams to be our winner, who would you go for?
That's a tricky one. I don't think I've seen enough from Space Eggs. I think that game was over pretty quick overall. There's something to be said, of course, about that. The fact that they just kind of steamrolled through Cube, who were another one of our semifinalists. That said, Out of the two that I've seen, I think Worn Down W looked maybe a little more polished, a little more capable of adapting to the fake out rotations and the weird teleports and things like that. And like we were just discussing, the weird like shock and awe plays only work if the other team is too surprised to counter you effectively.
Yes.
If they can have the composure and say, all right, guys, yeah, they're trying to teleport into us. We know exactly what to do here. Let's disengage or re-engage or get in where we need to go. Then those sorts of set plays lose a lot of their luster. So if either of the semifinalists on the other side that we haven't seen the winner of yet are proving to be adaptable and capable of maintaining themselves during those crazy set plays, I would give them the edge. If they both look to be kind of brawling it out and just kind of like screaming at each other and being surprised, then SpaceX might have a bit of an edge just because they're so into this, like, we're just going to run you over, shock and awe, teleport onto the point with the Bastion. What are you going to do about it type plays? That said, I think no matter what, we're in for something ridiculous, I'm sure. I think any of the either of the two teams rather coming up against SpaceX to get this far are probably at least capable of a little bit of something special. So obviously we're looking at a finals here. This is the culmination of an entire tournament of chaos, of matches and matches and matches, short as they are, of teams just throwing stuff at each other that you would never expect to see. So we're in for an interesting final.
That we are. And while we wait for Rapid Unscheduled Disassembly and Worn Down W to finish up their match, we're going to go to a quick break, everybody. But don't go anywhere because we are going to be right back with our finals. And we're back with the action, ladies and gentlemen. We've got the finals coming right up. I am Shadow24, and joining me for today, of course, you've heard his voice all day, is the wonderful Thibble. And we are going to be bringing you Space Eggs versus Worn Down W. Now, we talked very briefly about what this matchup could mean, and you did say that Worn Down W was going to be your pick. Are you sticking with it?
At the moment, I would say so. We obviously didn't get to see Worn Down W take out Rapid Unscheduled Disassembly, which is just a fantastic collection of names. But overall, I would say that I liked what I saw from them and was able to garner more information from what I saw from them than I saw from SpaceX. I also believe this is a rematch, if I got that right, and that
yes. Apparently the first streamed game of the day was these two.
And it was relatively one-sided. Again, these are best of one, so you can never really tell, how much these teams might be able to adapt to one another over the course of a traditional series. But from what we saw, I would probably maintain my prediction so far.
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and I guess I'm not really playing devil's advocate. I'm just hopping on the other side of the fence. I'm going to take Space Eggs. I like their play last time around. I think that they might have more of the sticker shock factor. So I'm definitely going to go for Space Eggs. We're going to go ahead and look at the rosters real quick one last time before we hop on into the match.
Yeah, I mean, both of these teams, I think, have really shown us a good bit of flexibility and composition over the course of their games that we've seen with them. Minox was doing a fantastic job on Widow, had a little bit of a flex capability as well on the Genji. Lesra was all over the place with his heroes, some Sim, some Bastion, stuff like that, some Echo as well. So I think it'll be interesting to see perhaps how those two try and kind of flex around one another. At the same time, if Minox is picking Widow more often, keep an eye on Castleton, who is having a pretty decent game as Ashe over the course of that Volskaya that we watched. But of course, I mean, there's tons of different matchups you could keep an eye on here. You could look at Jazz versus Alve on the off tank sort of role. You could look at Pikal on the Ana and how he's going to match up against his fellow flex support there in the backline. He's been getting some great anti-nades over the course of these series, and in general has seemed kind of like the linchpin of Worn Down W strategies here. So I think no matter what, we're getting a slobber knocker, but there's a lot of individual matchups that you could look at if you're interested in that sort of thing.
As we look into our map set, it looks like we are going to be going to Eichenwald for our matchup here. And this game is going to be bringing in an aspect of the tournament that you don't get anywhere else. And what I mean by that is Worn Down W and SpaceX, like we talked about very briefly just a second ago, they faced off against each other before. And not often do teams in this tournament get a chance to get that kind of information on their opposing team. So they've played against Pykelzana. They've played against Minox Hitscan and such like that. That being said, they know what kind of threat Pickle's going to be on that Ana. How do they combat that?
Right. I mean, I think an answer that was sort of being found over the course of the last two series that we've been looking at is maybe like a Reinhardt Sigma composition. Obviously, Orisa is dead in the water, utterly useless. At least most people
4 legs
feel
and
that
can't
she
swim.
is that way. Right? Yeah, she's got 4 legs, but she's not fast. You name it. She's a bit of a lame duck at the moment. So this Reinhardt Sigma composition is maybe a way to try and recover some of that inevitable advantage of a double barrier composition, also still allowing for aggression and flexibility in your rotations and in your engagements. In addition, all those barriers being up makes it way harder for an Ana to hit an anti-nade. Not impossible, as we saw, because he was still getting some decent value.
He was still sneaking them behind the shields.
Absolutely. And there are intervals where you will be very impactful with that if you are mindful and if you're keeping an eye on where to land those nades. That said, there were points where Pykel just swapped to the Baptiste instead. And said, you know what, I don't think I'm going to get enough value out of the Ana. I might as well be playing something that can put a little extra damage on those shields, put a little extra pressure on the enemy team. So we could see an adaptation like that again. That said, if SpaceX opt for perhaps a dive or try and throw things off with a Wrecking Ball or a Winston Zarya sort of composition, or kind of the flavor of the week, the Hog Zarya, I think Pikal might maybe pick them apart a bit. Because the last time anyone tried that against Worn Down W, well, we know how that went. Worn Down W are in the finals, and that other team is not.
Yeah. Very, very true indeed. It also looks like SpaceX might be looking for another ringer. They had one of their members drop out a little bit, so throwing a little bit more mystery into the bin that we're already kind of pulling from here.
Right. This is definitely more of a casual format. So you might see on occasion some new players, some ringers, as just mentioned here. And that actually adds an interesting wrinkle that we obviously really never see in other tournaments. You don't really get to, with some exceptions, you don't really get to just bring in some other random player. So this could end up being pretty interesting. Of course, we have no idea who would be joining. Although actually we do just have someone. Of course, I have no idea who this is.
Yeah, we know their name is Olivero.
Yes.
That's about it, though.
This is like, there was some like DC superhero animated series, and someone like took control of the Flash and walked him into a bathroom with a mirror and was like, now I'll know your secret identity because I can pull your mask off because I'm mind controlling you. And he pulled off the mask and he was like, it's just a guy. I don't know who this is. It's just a random person. So that's definitely kind of the situation we have here. We pull off the mask of this mysterious ringer, and it's no one we know. It's not like a Contenders player or an Overwatch player. Yeah, it's that guy. It's not Samito. I don't know what to do with this information. So at the very least, they have 6 players. That's good.
Yeah, and for the sake of my prediction record, hopefully Olivero brings in a boost of inspiration and eliminations. There we go.
That's the word you were looking for? Okay.
Yes, it was. Had to keep it PG.
Think there's a chance, of course, that this guy steps in and is just like, all right, guys, stand back and watch this. And then he, goes nuts.
Hold my juice box.
Exactly. Yes. Hold my earrings. I'm going in. I frankly don't even know what role he is. So this could be a hit scan star saying, don't worry, guys, my widow's going to go nuts. Or an off tank. I don't believe he's a support. Or no, he's not a DPS either. I'm dumb. Castleton and Lesra.
Yeah, Castleton and Lesra are support. I believe he's coming in as a tank.
Yes. Okay. So, I mean, as I've kind of mentioned earlier in the day, this is a meta that really allows for individual kind of clutch plays from almost any role. You have people like Bakal getting crazy anti-nades and doing work as Ana, or Furry Tail Uwu, which again is a name we really should be saying more just because it's funny, quietly carrying as Mercy or as some sort of main support role, getting pick-off kills as Lucio perhaps or anything like that. And then you have the front line obviously doing lots of work, dealing lots of front-loaded damage and having really impactful ultimates, and the DPS doing standard DPS things, just ripping people's heads off and moving forward. So given that Oliveira is a tank, there's a good chance that he could try and step up and say like, hey guys, I'm going to roll onto one of these more carry style tanks and just do my best to click some heads. And you guys can just back me up on that or do whatever sort of rotations you want to do. I'm just going to be here doing the thing that I do, which is ruining people's day. So I'm very curious to see how they slot him in kind of last minute as we get into the map here. And Eichenwald's a fun one too. There's a lot of flexibility. I love this map so much. It is, of course, gorgeous.
Eichenwald has got to be one of the few maps that the first time I played it, I think I lost horribly on it, but I ended the match and I was like, oh, so this is a cool map. There's so much you can do. I mean, and back then that was when the meta was also much more defined as far as what you could run. I was playing on console at the time.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a different experience for sure.
But yeah, it is a map where, you know, I think it's one of maybe a handful of maps that you can run almost anything here.
Yeah, tons of flexibility. I mean, there's room for a Pharah composition. There's room for double hit scan. There's room for dive. There's room for whatever passes for a death ball these days. It definitely just depends on what you're comfortable on. Oliveira rolling out on the Reinhardt, which we talked about this sort of like evolution of double barrier of the Rein Sigma kind of taking over from that poor dead horse. And that could cause a couple wrinkles coming out for Worn Down W, because they're going to roll out with the Ana and really try and get some value out of those nades and the damage boosting capabilities of her ultimate.
Well, we're going to kick it straight off and waste no time. We are going to have Worn Down W in the red and Space Eggs in the blue on the defense here at the very beginning. Worn Down W wasting no time with getting their tanks into position here on the middle tower as Furious Demo begins to spark his flank off to the left, gathering up the information and telling his team that we should come this way. Pingy did get slept there on the side. Speaking of sleeps now, Furious Demo very sneakily making his way around, looking for the kill onto the Ashe, finds Castleton. Looking for the one clip, able to grab it with the melee and the help of Minox. Minox doing a beautiful job of coordinating that shot with Furious Demo. Now, Worn Down W able to take the point with not necessarily ease, but they've got bodies to spare as they take point one.
And time to spare, too. I mean, the long flank did end up paying off. It certainly took its time. But hey, it's not weird if it works, right? So being able to have that rotation completely uncontested, not a soul saw him go. And really just applying pressure onto that high ground position was really all they needed to kind of dislodge Space Eggs here. Now they're pushing forward with, again, lots of time. I must emphasize that. Eichenwald, the time banks can get real low real fast, so being able to maintain that is crucial coming into Streets.
And we've talked about the importance of momentum in the game as well. Pengi getting caught out there at the very end is able to activate the Primal Rage just in time. He gets the bubble from Alv off of the charge, and then is able to activate the Primal Rage coming out of that. Is able to find a couple of kills in that form. Is going to have to relinquish himself to spawn after a short second, but Worn Down W still very much so at a cruising speed. Minox getting caught out there, being quite aggressive on the Ashe. Nothing like a close quarters sniper.
Yeah, I just want to shout out Pengi there because he had 9 health and then like frame perfect Primal Rage before getting charged. I have no idea how he did that. It certainly never works in my ranked games. But hey, you know, these guys are playing at a higher level, I suppose. Now they're just looking to re-engage after a couple picks that kind of forced them back for a bit, and Castleton making sure that that sort of disengage continues.
Ooh, man. Castleton getting taken out by Minix, but Minix having the favor returned to him by Olivero there with the Fire Strike. The payload has still kind of just sat here at this bridge. We haven't really seen them be able to progress farther. Graviton does come out from Alv as the Echo goes on to the Ana. Lesra there to give a little bit of extra healing and a quick nano boost as well. The nano boost goes on to Parasite the Mercy. Parasite grabs 1, Parasite grabs 2, and Mercy is hunting ladies and gentlemen. Never scoff at a Mercy's blaster.
I mean, first off, the duplicate onto the Ana specifically to support the Reinhardt that was going down was top-notch. That was a great heads-up play. Of course, kind of dampened by accidentally nanoing the Mercy instead, but like you said, the Parasite's credit, still turned that around and got a kill off of it. A Nano Valkyrie is nothing to sneeze at. And now it looks like Space Eggs are actually able to stabilize it. Getting these 2 picks, Castleton going crazy up here on the bridge, manages to force out Minax, but wow. Like, that was a great heads-up play from Space Eggs. That is something that's just, like, pure instinct moving there in real time.
Not to mention that the Ana of their own is going to have a nano boost coming up. They have a Shatter, a Bob, and almost a Valkyrie. They just need to be careful about the Bob coming in from the red side.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately even here overall, but Pengi is close to that Shatter. So is Olivero. It's just going to be a matter of who can start pressing Qs first, or if Lesra can get that pick on the Minix to start.
And there will be the res onto Minix, so they will be able to equalize back up to a 6v6. There goes the nano boost coming out from Egg onto Olivero. Olivero has the Shatter at the ready. Castleton's Bob down there already doing work. It looks like a flanking Furious demo on this McCree, trying to get something done. Had to disengage from the bridge, was not able to hold his ground.
Right, and I think just he was just forced off that high ground there, and Castleton is getting so much work done. He's hitting all his shots. His tanks are applying the right amount of pressure. The solo Shatter grab. That, okay, I don't want to just say that was a bad play, because it's psychological. They might not have intended for it to be psychological, but that sends a message. That says, we are not afraid of you. Frankly, if I'm on the other team, I'm just like, okay, these guys think we suck. I'm kind of mad at this point. So I want to see Worn Down W walk forward with some aggression here, because wow, that's some BM if I've ever seen it. Or just
Pengi has the perfect opportunity, but a good sleep puts him into an inopportune nap time. Still trying to find a time to get that Shatter out. Lays down the Shatter, but it does get blocked. So he's not going to find any value from that. The Deadeye from Furious demo online, but he's taken out by Castleton, so now no ultimates online as Alv sleeps on the Zarya. You see Lesra did get the copy onto the Reinhardt, has the Shatter available, looking for the kill onto Pykel and able to find it. And I asked you earlier, what's it going to take for Space Eggs to beat Pykel's Ana? It looks like it's just kill the whole team every time.
Right, and I think Olivero on the Reinhardt has been pretty much exactly what they needed. We talked about, is he going to be the carry? Is he going to be just the person that he lets the team kind of operate around? And the latter seems to be true. He's playing this Reinhardt, taking the space the team needs, and then just saying, work with what I give you here. And Castleton is taking huge advantage of that. And Lesra as well is also, whoa, okay, I got to stop.
What a Shattered Graviton combination. The Deadeye from Furious demo will shine through. And they will get the sleep dart onto Olivero as well as the kill. They'll get a little bit of payload movement, but they weren't actually able to capitalize on that Graviton the way that they wanted to. And now there's a Bob on point to stall the payload out even further.
Perfectly so. And now the recontest coming through on the Wrecking Ball. I mean, the flashier, the plays can be as flashy as you like, but if you can't capitalize on it, you might as well have not used them at all. I still feel like the Graviton and the Shatter was a bit of an overcommitment, which has been a consistent thing in these last couple fights. And Olivero is just being way too consistent for this team. So ultimately, I think this round is looking pretty done and dusted here. Some flashy plays coming through, but just not enough to really turn things around decisively in these fights for Worn Down W. Space Eggs
very quick, very clean, on that very consistent. But they just weren't able to keep that payload moving. And you said earlier, you know, time banks on Eichenwald, they can go down so quickly. Your fates can change so quickly here.
Yeah, I mean, these fights rather are just so back and forth, and like we just saw, I mean, you could get a huge shatter and a graviton combo, but if you let your shield down then and then get high nooned, all of that work you just put in is gone. So these teams, I think both, the one is doing slightly better than the other right now, obviously. Both teams need to take a second to breathe. Obviously, that's easier said than done when your team is pretty much cobbled together and you're just kind of going with the flow, as it were. But I hope they're taking these 40 seconds to 90 seconds to just, okay, let's talk about that. Let's see, what do we have to do to kind of clean up some of our more obvious mistakes on both ends, because neither of them had the perfect attack or the perfect defense. Yeah. Right. I mean, SpaceX, credit to them. That looked great. They did a really good job of just understanding, like, hey, you know, over the course of this fight, we're going to do this. And then the next fight, we're going to do that. It looked like that logic was moving for SpaceX in a big way, which is huge and very important in a game like this. But I think both of them have some things that they can improve on coming into this round, either to have a very decisive attack here for SpaceX, or perhaps a very decisive defense for Worn Down W. This is still winnable for them despite how that attack went, but they will have to be playing lights out.
Good job on Lesra to break down that single column on the May wall to allow for SpaceX to stay with their main tank. Caston will find the opening kill, Pingy quick to follow. They will be able to get Lesra back into the fight. Another anti-nade from Egg goes in, but it lands onto nothing. Sleep dart onto his Zarya bubble, not able to land that either. No cooldowns left. Pykel there in the back line. Does get taken out by Jazz, flanking on the Zarya. Not a move that you see very often, but able to get into a position to enable the Reinhardt. Jazz staying alive with the help of his healers. Look for the kill onto the Mercy. Is able to secure that. Now turning to the Zarya and Tracer. Only a couple members left of Worn Down W on the point to stop SpaceX from taking it. And it looks like they're going to be able to deal with these respawns, these final remaining members fairly well. Jazz, however, going to get knocked down by Pingy as Pingy looks to lead the charge back onto the point.
Oh, that was good. That was a great counter charge there, just to give Pykel enough time to finish off Olivero, and they actually managed to hold this without even giving up a tick, despite that fight looking pretty decisive throughout. I mean, there were a lot of really good picks coming out from Castleton, but then Pengy kind of getting the swap back onto Lesra despite the res at the beginning of that fight. I think ultimately it burned out too many resources for SpaceX to make anything happen with that, and they were never able to wrest control of the point away long enough to actually get any meaningful progress. So a good attempt at a first fight there, but Pykel on this Baptiste is actually enabling things quite well. That said, this Ant Matrix did not get a lot done.
Speaking of getting a lot done, the Graviton does get taken out by Jazz, and they are able to find a single kill onto Furious Demo. Pingy, being mighty aggressive against the nano-boosted Reinhardt, has to back out of the fight, but so many ultimates online right now for Worn Down W. They are able to find that shatter, and when they put Bob in, that's what matters. That's how you get the kills, ladies and gentlemen. Sent back to spawn, only one ultimate to boot. At this point, Worn Down W is looking mighty strong on point 1.
Well, I think they're going to have to see what value they can get out of this Grav Pulse Bomb combo, because that's all they have left after that fight, committing the Valkyrie, the Ant Matrix early. The Bob obviously got some work done off the back of the Shatter, but ultimately an expensive fight for Worn Down W. That said, I mean, a Grav Pulse Bomb combo, if executed perfectly, is all you need. Let's see what they can get.
There's the Graviton. Pulse Bomb expected to come in soon. Looks like it did get used. Didn't see any kills come out from it. Immortality Field was up. Healing was coming through, but Pykel and Furious Dimmel still able to find themselves into the kill feed as we pass the 60-second mark. Worn Down W continuing to hold strong, but ultimates have now been saved up by SpaceX, and all we have is the Window and a Valkyrie.
Right, the support ultimates could get quite a bit done here for Worn Down W, but they didn't the last time. That said, Pykel's Immortality Field was super clutch after the Shatter caught a couple of them off guard for Worn Down W. The Window comes out, doesn't seem to be doing much, but it is pinning them down, costing them crucial time. The Window, I believe, lost 15 or so seconds, and the pick off of Pengy there, I mean, that only delays things further. Parasite coming out with the res here, but they're really scrambling for time at this point.
Good job of keeping themselves playing around this corner. Lesra now looking for the copy, is able to find the Zarya, but immediately gets taken out of that echoed form and pushed hard by Pengi. Minox's Bob onto the point will take Oliveira out of the fight, as well as Alv getting Castleton. It is looking bleak right now for SpaceX. Worn down W, about to get enough to put a new keycap onto that W. There it is, Jazz, sorry, getting taken out there at the very end. Egg will try, namesake of the team, to get back on, but worn down W will take the W.
Yes, indeed. I had some great picks to start on that last fight from Minox. We talked about the fire strike from Pengi, but as soon as SpaceX kind of restabilized, got the res, and were ready to go back in again, they were just immediately cut off again by Minox getting 2 quick kills on the Ashe, and generally just doing insane work throughout, really canceling out Lesra's effectiveness on the Echo almost all the way through. And while I understand the commitment coming out from SpaceX to attempt something like that and to try and get the quick graviton off of a duplication, I don't even think he made it to the ground as Zarya before he was brought back into his standard form.
Right as he hit, and right as he hit, he got hit with the Reinhardt swing and a lot of other damage, and was instantly taken out.
Right, and with 0 energy, he probably dealt a combined like 15 damage before going back into his standard Echo form. So just great counters in general coming out from Worn Down W, either the old-fashioned way, taking some heads off, or just understanding that, hey, if we disengage at the right times here, if we deny value from the ultimates that they try and initiate with, we can come in with our own or with a couple picks of our own, because Minox is just going to do Minox things, that we should have this pretty well in the bag. And those holds were so clean. I mean, great immortality fields, just some great picks in general from Minox. I keep harping on that, but they were so good. And some great like counter charges and zoning and space control from Pengi. He made sure that whatever sightline SpaceX wanted to try and come down, you weren't going to get away scot-free. So I think great effort overall from Worn Down W. Definitely play befitting a champion.
Play befitting a champion, indeed. And I just want to say that, like, I may or may not have predicted the amazing duo of main tank and main support, but you know, both Pykel and Pengi doing an amazing job there at the end. And one of the things that I love so much about Pengi's play is the aggression on that Reinhardt. You hear a lot of talk about Reinhardt's being aggressive and how they need to be aggressive, and often that turns into people going way too far down the spectrum, and that's when you get your Reinhardt's charging off into the team kind of situations. But you really did see that balance met with Pengi and Pykel, as Pykel's would literally turn away from the majority of the team, focus on Pengi, and then you would see Pengi cross the point without the shield, swinging the hammer after an Echo, or what have you. Like, the only reason that they got taken out of that Zarya so early and then got killed was because Pengi was given that kind of freedom to chase down that echoed Zarya, to chase down the Echo afterwards, so on and so forth.
Right. It was very reminiscent, I think, of Sato and Alarm from the Philadelphia Fusion. Sato has definitely shown us the two ends of the Reinhardt spectrum, where either you're opening a soup kitchen and inviting all the other teams to come for all you can eat, or you end up being a terror, an absolute monster of a performer on a Reinhardt, when, frankly, the turnaround is weirdly visible. But I think what really nails that, much like Alarm carrying Sato, who I frankly consider to be relatively mid-tier without one of the best flex supports in the game at his back, but Pykel was able to enable Pengi quite a bit. Not to say that he's a feeder or anything without Pykel, but just he had a really good game because he was enabled by his support line to take the space he needed without fear. As a Reinhardt, if you play scared, you're playing behind. So having that support in your back pocket, really makes a difference, like insanely so.
So now that we've had our fun with our analysis, we've cast our day of Overwatch, you have to pick your vote for MVP. I know who I'm going with.
It's Pykel without question.
Yeah.
I think.
I agree.
I mean, really, I like Worn Down W as a whole had quite the day. I think there were some great plays across the board, some great gravitons from Alv, good shatters, fire strikes, and zoning from Pengi. Good understanding of what you need to be doing in that main tank position. Some amazing picks from Minox, some great flanks and general support and shield pressure from Furious Demo. But Baikal in general was just everywhere you needed him to be at once. Always hitting great anti-nades, always getting good value out of his immortality fields. Not the best ant matrices, but sometimes you just use that to force them to back up anyways. It's a zoning ult sometimes. And that still accomplished its goal. And even without it, he was doing work. So I would definitely have to say Baikal because, wow, he stepped up.
I agree 100%. If you guys don't agree, let us know in chat who you think the MVP of today is. But that is going to be doing it for myself and Thibbledork. You can find us at our Twitters down just below. And of course, if you're not following the Elo Hell channel or the Elo Hell Twitter, please go and do so you can know when these wonderful events are going to take place and figure out how you can get involved in some sort of Elo Hell tournament down the road. Have a good evening, everybody, and I hope you stick around for our NA matches that are coming down the road today.